Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to discuss about sense and nonsense about survey by Howard Scummon. I am Freddy Kurniawan, discussion leader.
I'm Shireen, the reporter.
I'm Sabina, the business master.
I'm Hira, the connector.
I'm Ian, the devil advocate.
Now let's start the discussion. First question, what are the main factors which influence the success of a survey?
I think the sample size is one of the factors, because if you have a small sample size, it wouldn't be able to represent a community or a country, but it would preferably to have a more moderate or a larger sample size. But if you have a larger sample size, you would waste more time, more money, and more resources. And also you would also get very unnecessary or unrelated feedback. So it's better to have a balanced or more moderate sample size.
And I think accessibility is also another factor. Let's say you are doing a survey in a rural area and you plan to use web apps. It's true that now most of people they can have access to internet connections, but in the rural area the line can be poor and some already they don't even have internet connections. So in a way that you cannot get data or any information from them because your questionnaire is not reachable to them. So in this case, I think paper-based is a better option.
Is there any other opinion?
Yes, the format, the organization, and the wording. It must be short, simple, and precise.
And also the publicity, poster, announcement, and information from the word of mouth. Like more people know your survey, then more people will respond to your survey, then the response rate increase, then the result more accurate.
Is there any other opinion? So I can conclude that there are four main factors which influence the success of a survey. First, their sample size. Second, their accessibility. Third is publicity. And the last one is the format, organization, and wording of the questionnaire. Now let's move to the second question, which is, do improper wording affect the result of the survey?
Yeah, it does affect, because people have different meanings or different acts attached to a word. So they have different people have different perspective when it comes to a word. So maybe when they answer your survey, it is based on what they think or how they look at it. So it is very important to let them know by what you mean when you ask them that word or
The question.
that question. Yeah.
Can any one of you give examples? The word like different or the same word but different meaning in other people.
Like the word uptight, for the black, it means someone close to them, and for the white, it means tense and anger.
And this, I saw this one example from the readings. Okay, the first one, do you think that the US should forbid public speeches against democracy? And the second one, do you think that the US should not allow public speeches against democracies? And based on this survey, the 75% says disallow and 54% says forbid. And you see, both of these words means the same thing. It's just that the wordings is slightly different and people interpret it differently. And of course, it affects the result of the survey.
Like adding to what Savannah mentioned, forbid means forcefully not to do something, and allow is not allow something to happen. So we can apply it to symbolic interactions, like people attach different meanings of the words based on their actions.
Also, come to look at it, forbid. If you compare forbid and not allow, you can actually think that forbid has a much harsher meaning than not allow.
Yeah, it sounds more intense
Yeah.
in a way and more serious, whereas not allow is more casual, free, and relaxed.
Yeah, a bit lenient.
Yeah.
So you are saying that different words have different meaning.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other conclusion, we can say that both same word and different word have different meanings in different type of people. Now let's move to the third question, which is, do different methods of sampling affect the result of a survey?
Yes. Example like conducting surveys through telephone. What do you think? Did you find any examples from the message?
Like you said, the telephone sampling, right? Its convenience depends on the place that you do the survey. Let's say, okay, I'm just going to use the same examples. Like if you do a survey in a rural area, then the space can be very poor, and even those who have phones, you cannot reach them. So you still cannot get data from those respondents. And if you do the survey in a city, then telephone sampling is quite practical.
And you can also connect it back to this message about Gallup. About his hopes and his survey that he conducted. He proposed that Literary Digest made some error about their sampling, that they predicted that Landon would win the election, but in the end, Roosevelt won. The type of method that they used were telephone sampling, but at that time, if you trace back during 1936, it was the period of depression. So those who have handphones and automobiles were like those rich and higher classes. So if telephone were used as a medium or as a way to conduct survey, it's not applicable. Do you want to answer why?
Yeah, I think you get the biased results.
Yes.
Because, like you said, it's only for the rich. So it's like you only get the data from the rich, and you didn't get the opinions from the poor people. So of course you end up with a biased result.
So we can also, it's like what we studied earlier about capitalism. Yeah, that money and power is concentrated
In the hands of the rich.
So if you were to do telephone sampling, maybe it's more practical to do in an urban area compared to rural. If rural, probably you could do like a paper test, paper base, or like a postal sort of sending back your questionnaires.
and free prepaid card. I think what she said, and you have to be there to explain because you do not know like the literacy rate. Maybe they may be highly educated or we don't know that. So we have to be there to explain, to make sure that they understand what is being asked, to make sure we get the more accurate results.
Yeah, sure.
You want to criticize something?
I want to ask a question about low response rate. Assuming now you are doing a survey in ADB, and ADB got 800 people, and many people reject doing your survey, so you get a low response rate, like only got 20 people answer your questions. So in the articles, it says that moderate amounts of non-response is not a problem to the survey because the bias will occur only if the non-respondents is different from the respondents. So, but the problem is you don't know the effect of the non-response. So, how do you deal with the problem?
You have to go back to the designing of the questionnaire. What do you think?
Yeah, it's true like what Pira is saying, because okay, let's say your target group now is ADP students, and maybe your questions or your topic is more suitable for the adult. So if you use that questionnaire for your survey, in this case for ADP students, of course you get a very low response rate. Yeah, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the kind of question that you ask. It may be like leading questions, research question. When you ask, you lead to something else. Instead of getting this answer, you get something else.
Maybe the question is also very lengthy.
Yes.
Because lengthy question takes time, and people get irritated to answer your questions, and they just lose interest. So in the end, they'll just like simply answer your questions, and
It may be boring and also like sensitive questions, so they don't really want to push.
So you guys want is limited by the questions because people answer your questions, then that is your result. Then what you ask, you get the information. So the information is limited. Like the example in the articles is they ask about the most important problem facing the country, and they use two forms of questions. One is open question, the other one is closed-ended question. Then the closed-ended question, they give 4 choices to choose. Then the result shows that only 3% from the open questions answer match with the closed-ended questions. So the result of the 2 different types of questions is of the same thing, different forms of questions have the different results. So I wanted to say that your design of questionnaire can affect the result, and also it cannot assure the courses because the questions. Do you have anything you want to say about my opinion?
Well, it's actually better, like if you're conducting a survey, it's actually much better to use closed-ended questions, because if you use open-ended questions, it will result in a huge variety of answers, and your data will just run out of place. So it would be much better to control your survey, the results and everything, through closed-ended questions.
The problem is the closed-ended question may not representative enough. The choices that given in the questions may not match the majority people's opinion. So,
But it depends, because if you conduct, imagine you have to collect like from million you're representing. So how are you going to do that? Like from 1 million, let's say the population is 1 million, right? Then imagine you have to go all the way and ask them all that question. How are you going to handle with such a lengthy answer? How are you going to analyze
And also, every researchers, most of them, they specify which aspect they want to study. So, like what Shane said, the closed-ended question is better because it's easier for you to generalize the whole data instead of open-ended questions.
So basically you have to set like the target group. Yeah.
so you mean like the questions I design should be specific so that I will get what I want now.
Yes.
So is there any other opinion?
No.
Okay. So I think we should end this discussion, okay?
Yes.
So in conclusion, different method of sampling also affect the result of the survey, because some methods are better in a certain place or certain type of age group. While on the other hand, the other method of survey also better in the other place or the other type of age group. So this is the end of our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.